Alrighty, hello everyone, and welcome back to Measured Response. My name is Jeff, also known as Ysengrin, and joined as always by Safer. Say hi, Safer.
Safer.
Um, Hope everyone's doing well. We're doing a special weekend measure because we felt like doing a measured response right before the ban list came out, where we would have to just say, oh, I don't know if we can say that much, was not cool, but also we like talking, and so we were just going to do Saturday when it worked better for both of our schedules. Um, 1 second. Safer, we both were at a tournament last weekend. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we were at Boston Megacities last weekend, and it was a lot of fun. Got to see a bunch of people, which is always a reason to come out and play. In general, this season I was hoping to compete more, and part of my hope was that I would have a little bit more time to I would dedicate more time to practicing and really trying to not just last minute be oh, what am I playing? And how do I play these things? And leading up to the event, I had so little time for actually playing Netrunner that I just completely gave up on the concept of trying to be particularly competitive, and was just I'm just gonna have fun. So I ended up playing Combo PD with a midnight 3 variant on it, that D was working on and playing. And to be honest, my assumption was I was D's playing this list, so it must be better than the other thing. I'll just copy and hobble my way through the differences of this deck. Which turns out, I think D was it's just more fun and it's harder to play. It's not necessarily better. And I went, oh, this was after the event. And I also last minute was you know what? I want to play Criminal. I don't want to play Mostly Hot for whatever reason. The current one Mystic, one Touchstone, double reprise. Mostly Hot just does not speak to me for whatever reason. So I was I'm going to play Baz. And so I last minute looked up the Baz lists the morning of my flight, sleeved up list Koga's deep dive Baz list.
Yeah.
Shuffled together a couple opening hands and went, I think I need to make some changes to this. This also doesn't speak to me. Message Jeff hey, we need to make a deck. Can I borrow some cards?
Yeah, that was fun. I actually
it was a fun list. That was fun.
Yeah, at some point, basically what I do is oh, I have this list. I feel like all the influence is wrong. So let's just take Koga's list of oh, Swift is Hermes has some odd anti-synergies. So let's take out the Hermes and the way I was spending influence, and then take my deck, which had, I would say, more consistent econ, and just kind of smush the two lists together. And I think they came out in a kind of interesting way.
Yeah, it did. It did.
I'll be interested to play.
It's fun, and it's just it's so nice to be playing Baz again.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel like I was constantly fighting an uphill battle. It just felt like I was missing multi-access. That's the only thing that it felt like.
Yeah, because you're all in on two deep dives. Yeah.
Very all in. How is your tournament experience?
Yeah, so I had sort of a similar thing where I was oh, I'm going to start practicing. I'm going to start playing Netrunner again. And boy, life decided to throw some curveballs at me in the couple of weeks before I was planning to start getting back into Netrunner. And then, so basically I played almost no Netrunner. And so I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to default to stuff I know. I've been showing up at local events, playing Alco. It's not quote unquote best in format, but it's a deck I can play and understand what I should be doing. And maybe I just won't hit that many lose. And then I basically did the exact same thing on the runner side where I said, oh yeah, Ari is not, again, the best deck in the format, but it is a deck that I know really well. And well, I'm not going to be too, I don't know. I think I am a very good Ari player. And so it's just better for me to play Ari than it is for me to play a bad version of a better deck. or be playing a deck that I am worse at, even if the deck is stronger. Like it has to be quite a bit stronger for it to be kind of worth it if I'm not going to be practicing for the event. The big innovation, the big snare bear innovation. I think actually, yeah, this definitely comes from Jonas. It was just playing two compilations, uh, and a burner. The burner I never fired and actually drew multiple games and said, I actually wish this was any other card. Hey, Ballroom, great to see you in the chat. But
Do you wish it was like a tailgate though?
uh,
Joking.
actually, in a couple
This
games,
is a bad joke.
yes.
This is a bad joke.
No, no. I mean, I almost would have preferred a tailgate. I think, like, honestly, it being just like a generic econ card would have been better in most of those situations. But having two compilations like was uh like it was amazing. Like this meta is so like operation combo heavy, and just being like, oh yeah, I can cup this card, and then like spending a cup to then go and cup the card I actually cared about was a line I did quite a bit. I missed a win that I should have just like that like double cups actually would have had a guaranteed win in my like round 6. I needed to win both round 6 and 7 to make it into the cut. And I just kind of threw a free win against PD where they had no ice protecting HQ. And I could have like installed my second cup, grabbed a random card, and then swept HQ and won. But I didn't do that line for whatever reason. And so I lost.
Mhm.
I like PD then comboed out, didn't actually kill me because they were playing, I think, closer to what we had kind of been workshopping, where you just drop the Nova Spike and play a second Flood and just like score more aggressively. Um, so I don't know. Those were sort of the decks I was bringing. I had a nice time at the tournament. I did. I mean, I was one win away from making it into the top 8, which is significantly better than I thought I was doing. I was also really happy to see a 40-person turnout. That was great.
Yeah, that was
Um,
awesome.
I got
Venue was
to
good.
yeah, yeah.
Venue was
I
good.
got to yeah, had a very nice time. Got to then kind of that evening, like the snare bearers, none of us had really been practicing, so we all showed up. I think we almost all were like one game out of the cut, so we all just
every
eh,
single one of us was 4-3, I think, at the end of the
yeah.
day.
Actually, no.
Yeah.
I think maybe Ian was 3-3-1.
It was like 3-3-1. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's like
So
I'm gonna call that 4-3. We
yeah,
were
yeah,
all 3 losses.
yeah. So we all just came back to my place afterwards and just had a nice hangout and party where none of us had to worry about grinding for the next day. Which, like, you know what? Not what we wanted, but totally a fine upside. That was a lot of
It was
fun.
a great reminder of like it's just me looking forward to like our annual thing.
Yeah,
Like I'm really, really looking forward to that
yeah, yeah. That was a lot of fun.
now. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It was interesting. Like I went into that event. I think the other thing that was notable to me. So like I don't know. We've had a lot of conversation. We're going to talk about some of it more. Like I don't think we have any questions about Alco for today, right? But like
It'll come up
okay,
briefly.
it'll come up briefly. Yeah, but I was like I during the event I was like, man, my Alco deck. Like I had a really good game against Ice Cream College. It was a game where I probably could have played a little bit tighter, but he played very, very tight and got a well-deserved win. And then like all of my other games, no offense to my opponents just didn't quite understand what to do, and so I just like steamrolled all of them. And I was like, oh, maybe Alco does need a lot of bans because like it's kind of not like it's I'm not having to work very hard for some of these wins. And then on Sunday, we hung out and played a game, and like I played my Ari into my Alco list that you were playing, um, and it was
Yeah.
like,
And I should there's no universe where I should have lost that game. That was like not to Jeff's fault in any way, shape, or form. Jeff actually, I think, played close to flawlessly in that game, but I was so stupidly far ahead in a matchup advantage. Um and I somehow found a way to lose it. I threw so hard.
I mean, I think you did throw a little bit, and like that should have been like you had such a good initial board state, and
It was such a good
I
opening.
like I was playing Arya's like I drew literally no econ. Like I never saw the environmental testing. I had to use two simul chips for coalescence, or I think I used a muse like to get a coalescence to make money, and then had to simul chip another coalescence. Like that was the only way I was making money. But I think the thing that was interesting to me was
Yeah.
like, okay, like my draw was not great, your draw was pretty good, but it was still a game, and because I understood what the threats were, like I could still play it even though my deck was at a disadvantage. And like, should I have won that game? No, but like, was it a tight and
No, you
interesting game
should
in
have.
Netrunner?
This
Uh,
this is the what made me feel good about that game is that the
yeah,
player that played better won the game. Like
yeah,
that's all like that's what I want. And like it I didn't it was my first like I hadn't seen the Alkalist. I wasn't like super familiar with it. I don't think I've played very much Blood in the Water Alco in
yeah,
general.
yeah,
And there was like one turn in particular where I really cooked it, where I was like had two agendas in hand, and I didn't want them to be in hand, both of them to be in hand. And because I think you had like a cup on the table or something, and it was like you're on three, like you hit a Fuji or something. I don't remember the exact game state, but like I don't want to lose both of these like 4 points in a single run or whatever, right? So I discarded one to archives and kept one in HQ, and I discarded the longevity serum, and like that was such a clearly bad like play in
yeah,
my
yeah, yeah,
mind. Um, but it's just like comes from like inexperience with the deck, and like this is like I made play mistakes. I was advantaged. I made play mistakes. You didn't make play mistakes. You were able to win. This is a good outcome, you know? And
yeah.
like I can learn from the games and I can get better. And that's kind of one of the really engaging things about like competitive netrunner, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we'll come back. Well, this topic I think will come back up. But I think we had a bunch of good questions about the Banlist article because obviously that's what we're going to be talking about. Um, so I think you put them in an order. Do you want to read out the first question? Obviously,
Yeah.
I have no hand in making the ban list at all. So a bunch of these questions like, can you explain the logic and da, da, da. So I'm gonna maybe try and stay out of the way, but I also have lots of thoughts on these things too. So I'll be interesting. But
Yeah. I mean, I can start us off and then you can just like and tell me if I'm talking too long and
sounds
add
good.
any other context or things that you want to add on. So
Yeah, I
I
guess
think
actually
the
maybe
first
should I read the
Mhm.
questions then, and then that way you can start talking and I can jump in that way.
Sure, that
Yeah.
works. Can we just I want to do Josie's first and then the
Oh,
order that we
sure.
have here. So
Yeah, because
Josie's was
yeah. So why the
I'll
difference
let
in
you
treatment between Melias versus Alco and Ob? Uh,
Yep.
yeah.
I think actually this is even going to be more fun. I want you to answer this first. What
Sure,
do you
sure.
think like what do
Yeah,
you
yeah.
think
A-
like
As
FCC's logic is there and
yeah, so I mean, I mean, I think this kind of goes to the conversation we were just having. So, Alco and Ob are, or Alco. Let's start with Alco, right? Alco is an extremely sharp deck. You have to understand the lines and know what you're going to do against it as the runner. I think the thing I was trying to get to in my story, I didn't quite explicitly say, is like it kind of didn't matter what my deck did or like what the specific cards in my runner deck were, as long as I had some cards that made money, some cards that got me accesses, and then I had to understand what question the corp was asking. And it is very difficult because Alco asks a different type of question than any other corp in standard, and arguably like almost no corps in the last several years have asked questions the way that Alco does. But it still fundamentally says, I'm going to ask questions, and you have a lot. The runner has a lot of valid ways to answer it. So you can have answers as Shaper, you can have answer as Crims, and you can have answers Anarch. And your deck as the runner, like those answers are things that can be expected, can be useful in other matchups, but like it's just going to be part of the gameplay. From my perspective, Ob is very similar. Ob is a very consistent ID. It asks questions at a rate and consistency that make it very, very dangerous, and I think potentially like as a reason that both people wanted to be on the ban list and why it has caused many cards to be banned. Uh, but I think it also ultimately is a fair deck in the case that like runner, it says if you play the regular type of Netrunner, or like if you prepare your deck to play Netrunner, you will be able to play it. You just have to be ready to answer the threats. Melius actually kind of doesn't work on that same axis to some extent. And so, like, that's probably not the best point. I think this is maybe not the best of the points. I think there's actually an easier point to this. But, like, Melius to me is saying, like, oh, if you just guess wrong, you get blown out. And there's not like a thing that you can say like, oh, I can outplay consistently. I can do these things. Uh, it just at least sometimes says, yeah, sorry, you ran the wrong server at the wrong time. And the other thing is like, if you make a deck that's about running centrals, like against Alco and Ob, like it's maybe not the best strategy, but it's a strategy you can make work. But if you want to play a I care about centrals dot deck, you cannot do that if Melius U is in the meta. And A, that's the faction identity for Krim in a large part, and B, like that is much more shutting down of decks than other things are. To me, that's the like distinction that I would make is Melius U is a strong ID that like shuts off angles of play and styles of play, whereas Alco and Ob say you can come at me with different styles, you just have to be ready to dance to the tune. And like I would argue Alco and Ob are probably quote unquote stronger IDs, but I think they're less restrictive of the like what you can do on the other side of the table. But I could see other people having very different takes, so I'm interested to hear your answer.
So I think that's a fine take, right? Or a fair take. I think it's a reasonable take. I think that you could also disagree with other portions of that take, like your take here.
Yeah, yeah.
For me, I don't even really want to make a comparison between these identities because that's not how I think about it. Like, it's not. So one of the like the interesting wording here is like why the difference in treatment between the two, which I think like makes the assumption that we are comparing them or we are like kind of like we have like a certain like threshold is like, well, we can't ban all of the identities or we have to ban like specific identities or like something else is like going on there, where in reality it's about what is happening for each one of these archetypes and what does it represent and what does it do to the meta and what are the implications of it. So Alco and Ob, but that being said, I understand why people like draw these comparison points and like want to, be like, okay, does this seem like unfair treatment, so to speak, of different identities? And to me, Alco and Ob are both heavily synergy reliant identities. They require cards in your deck to do something. Like they can legitimately be blank identities that don't do anything. They have an incredibly powerful effect uh, because they're synergy reliant, and like they have both been very dominant in other metas. But at the end of the day, there's always some option that we can ban from those decks without necessarily needing to ban the identity itself. That doesn't mean that we're not going to ban those identities for what it's worth. We just take every single individual case by case and go, what is the best thing for the meta? Like banning Alco in standard elevation would have completely removed Jinteki assets from the pool. We're not looking to blow up decks just in general, unless they are presenting like actual gameplay health issues. We don't tend to just outright kill archetypes. So Ob and Alco as the identities, like the physical piece of cardboard, they're probably going to continue to stay in the card pool until the cards that we would need to ban to hit whatever the whatever the top tier archetypes that are making an unhealthy meta, whatever cards like physical pieces of cardboard that go into their decks that are better than the identity. Like, sorry, this is I think that my I'm not saying it particularly well, but hopefully people understand the train of thought. It's just a piece of cardboard. I think of all of the pieces of cardboard as being roughly equal to one another. And when identities are synergy reliant, we have a lot of different options for hitting those. Now, Milius, there's nothing that we can do that specifically targets Milius without also hitting every other Jinteki archetype that you would make. Obviously, La Costa would not specifically hit Alco, but you're not going to play in a tail list or an Isowak list or an RH list like at all. You're never going to consider any of those different identities because Melius is just going to be a strictly better use case for those, especially if La Costa is gone. Melius is so powerful that it could actually probably successfully deal with not having La Costa, whereas all of the other ones would just completely implode. They would be completely unplayable. So
Yeah, I
that's
think look at
how I'm thinking about it is like
yeah. I
we have
think
to take one of these things as an individual use case and be like, what are the impacts of hitting, a La Costa versus Emilius, or an enemy versus an Alco, or an extract versus an Ob.
yeah, I think that's a good. I think maybe a maybe not a concise way. Another way to think about that same idea is like looking at the ID as the deck is a shorthand that we use in the Netrunner community, but it is not the way to say when looking at a ban list how you should be thinking about things. So saying, oh yeah, decks that use Ob as the identity have been too strong. How do we adjust? How do we adjust the meta for that? Well, Ob is obviously one of the cards you can ban. It's not have to be the only card. And as you're saying, because Alco and Ob have highly synergistic pieces, it actually ends up being a lot of things where you can be like, oh, we can target hit this. We think that'll make the deck worse, but generally the goal is like, unless the deck is truly like an anti-pattern for how Netrunner should be played, it's better to just kind of try and clip the wings. And Melius U is going to be a little bit closer to me to like I mean, I was going to say make the analogy to precision design, but let's to me it's actually maybe a closer example would be something like engineering the future, where it's just like you can't print unless like your generic IDs can't compete with a card that works with every strategy you want to do. And Melius U just basically worked with every strategy unless it was a highly synergistic one, which is why Alco still had something of a place. Um, and most of the other Jinteki IDs are less highly synergistic. And so it's just a much bigger cost to everything when you try and clip the wings of those decks. I think Melius U also like the play pattern, just it sounds very fun and looks interesting, and I think in practice just becomes quite the slog, which I think doesn't help its case either.
I think that it's still like, I think it's just a very polarizing identity. Like we have a lot of people that enjoy playing it. We have people that enjoy playing into it because it can produce a lot of very different kinds of like decks and stuff. So
Yeah,
it was
that's fair.
not an easy decision, not a decision that I took lightly, but it's world that it is the decision that was made.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Should
all
we go
right,
to
shall we go on to the next one?
the first one in the thread? Um,
Yeah.
Okay, so this comes from Rohit. It says, I'd like to hear more about this paragraph in the article. We started our banlist testing with a slew of unbanned targets on both the runner and corp side to see what could re-enter the meta safely. Initial testing indicated that we could reintroduce both NBN Reality Plus and Svidagor Excavator. This would bring two new cork archetypes into the meta that would pull runners in multiple directions, addressing our concerns about runners all converging towards Doom Rig Loop. Can you explain a bit about how unbanning two cards that have historically been part of asset decks curbs the behaviors of runners converging towards Lu, an ID that has an anti-asset ability?
Yeah. I mean, this is a very good question because like surface level, it does seem counterintuitive. But I think that there's two key things going on here. First thing is that the more differing corps, the more different corp archetypes there are, the more runners have to kind of like plan for and try to like tech for in their decks. And that's where you can start to like get like triangular metas where, okay, Shaper and Criminal, nope, definitely not Criminal for this example. Shaper is going to be good into Nuvem and Oblists because you can tech it to be a specific way, but it's going to be not so good into Alco. Okay, Criminalists might have like a roughly even matchup into Alco, Struggle versus Nuvem, and have a roughly even matchup into Ob or something like that. And maybe they are like, you can have specific tech pieces that make you particularly good into R plus or whatever. Um, so you can have like basically get more runner diversity by creating more corp diversity. in a lot of ways. So that is part of the theory here. The second thing is that both of these identities, R plus and OB, have their own tools specifically for teching into a highly like specifically focused on companions economy Loo list. Um, the first thing is that they are not real credits. So for R plus, having to actually clear tags and have your companions be vulnerable if you overextend early, that's pretty meaningful. And tempo oppos like are going to make playing an early companion maybe, I'm not going to call it a trap, but like my point is that R plus has game into Lou. It's not to say that Lou can't do well into it, but like I would probably rather be playing criminal into R plus if depending on like what style they are doing, because cards like clean getaway and bravado like allow you to apply early pressure, um, and have like a robust economy from the beginning, and not have your like economy just tick down in like daily casts and other things like that.
Yeah, and I'll just say similar to someone who's
Um,
played a lot of Ob, I would much rather play against a Reg Anarch than I would against a Criminal, for example, or a Shaper. Like, Reg Anarch is usually one of the matchups that you're happier to see against. And it's really, like, I know that it's not like a universal thing, and it's not like, oh yeah, it's like a huge win. But, like, Ob generally does do a little bit better into Anarch than it does into the other factions.
yeah. So that I think that's it. I think that we have lots of questions, and I think that that is a good enough answer.
Cool. Fantastic. I think it'll be interesting to see. Never mind. We can keep going. There's lots of stuff. This question comes to us from SSJ Speed Racer. Do you think Melius U might be able to come back someday? I'll admit at the moment I am pretty tired of playing against it. I am relieved to get a break from it, but I do think conceptually it's very cool. I'd be a little sad if it never left my binder again. I also feel like I was finally starting to get better at beating it, so excuse me. I also feel like I was finally starting to get better at beating it. So much as I understand and don't fully disagree with the ban, I'm a little sad that all that practice has gone to waste.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
That's relatable. In terms of the actual question itself, do we think that it can ever be unbanned? I think that in a standard format, it seems unlikely that Jinteki will be in a place where Milius U unban makes sense. That being said, you never know. Um,
I mean,
I think that
we've had many
go
conversations that
ahead.
R plus was never coming back, and yet here we are, right? Like things can
Yeah,
happen.
yeah. Like we will kind of probably always be looking at we'll probably always be looking at like what can we unban? Like can we unban Milius U? We know that people enjoyed the deck, like enjoyed playing it, and it sucks to not be able to play something that is really really cool, um, and that can produce interesting games. So, maybe it's just like runner power needs to get to a certain level, and then Milius U can come back. There is also I'll shout out Rohit here for giving a pretty interesting idea that I only learned about on Sunday, and if I had thought about it 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, I might have like tried to start up some internal conversations about it. Where like disposal grounds ban is like it's a card, you can make it so that Milius can only choose between
So the runner
HQ
can in
and
theory
R&D.
always run archives to flip Melius U, basically. Um,
Right. And like it turns it from like 2/3 in favor of the corp to 2/3 in favor of the runner.
Well,
And I think that that's
it was
actually
actually
like
in theory
pretty
two
interesting.
thirds in favor of the runner before. So it's actually is increasing the odds for the corpse slightly if they don't want to run archives for like, but it gives the runner a
Yeah,
guaranteed
you're right.
out.
You're right. You're right. You're right.
Um,
You're right. Theoretically, it was in favor of the runner before, in theory.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
in theory.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, like I think that any like I don't know if this sees Eternal play. I don't know what
I don't think
happens in
it
Eternal,
does.
but
I guess yeah. So like my honest answer to this is I think there's two potential like my two things is like maybe there's a world where like post worlds SBT said or sorry what is it now it's FCT um, but says you know what? We put a couple cards on that were kind of marginal. Let's take them off. There's not many competitive events. We'll do an update at the start of the season. Have fun, play MLSU, play Extract, play Off-World Office. Like we'll just give cards a little. We'll do a room spring up ban list kind of thing. Uh,
Hmm.
and then it goes off again after people get tired of it after a month. Um, but I think the other thing is like bring it to casual events. Like I know people don't do
Yeah.
ban lists
Yeah.
for like people do respect ban lists for local meetups because it's just much easier, but like if you build an RH list, like, and you enjoy playing MeliusU or even against MeliusU, pack the ID and five extra cards, and then you can turn an RH deck into a MeliusU deck or a Taya deck. Like you could just bring a couple extra cards, and if you want to play against it, play against it, and it'll be a good time. So like I don't know, it's I know that's not actually going
Yeah.
to happen in practice, but it's something if you really enjoy playing against MeliusU, just bring it and bring it to your casual stuff.
I mean, I do think that it's a thing that people should just do more. Where it's like, if you enjoy playing the identity and it's cool, just have Amelia's you deck sleeved up. You can bring it to a casuals and just ask people like, maybe you're practicing for standard that day, and so you don't pull it out. But if you're just like, going to casuals, you're gonna have fun. Like, there's no like tournament or whatever. Like, there's plenty of times where I just show up and I'm like, I don't really care what I play. I'm here to play Netrunner and hang out with people and see people. So it doesn't matter that I'm playing Amelia's U list. Like, there's plenty of times where I rock up and I'm, playing someone else's deck, and I'm like, I would not have built it like this. This is painful for me to play as, but like, it's just like why are you there? So I don't know. I encourage people to do it and like have fun with it. And like, I think that you can also do that for other cards that are banned that
Yeah.
aren't going to make people want to rage quit, like Drago.
Yeah, like if you will say, "Hey, I really just miss playing Sable. I enjoy doing the mark stuff." Like, yeah, go ahead and knock yourself out. Like that's not gonna do stuff. If you're gonna be like, "Oh, Keeling was my special child," pull that deck out only with someone who's really down for it with you, right? Like, but
Yeah. All
um,
right.
yeah. I think next
Next
up
one.
we've got a very long one from me here. Awful Office should be unbanned. Thank you for coming to my TED talk.
Okay, but to actually elaborate on this.
Yeah, yeah. The ban list saw the unbanning of two extremely strong economy cards for other decks that, in my opinion, are much stronger than Off has maybe ever been. It's wild to me that it stayed banned for the sins of a deck I'm not convinced was too strong in the first place. Trades rights or quote unquote reg flood PD.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, so this is partially like a philosophical question. I think that there's a group of people that believe you should just ban the strongest power level card, or like whatever it is. It's like, oh, this card is like busted or this card is broken, so that card should be banned. I don't really adhere to that logic. I don't really adhere to that like that prescription, so to speak, of like thinking about game design or game balance. I think that it is totally fine to ban a less powerful card that puts whatever the archetype or the deck that it's in to like the appropriate power level that you're trying to like aim for. Now, off has a lot of other implications that are not great, and uh yeah, aren't great, but just on the context of like, why is off-world office banned? It's less powerful of an economy card than Vitagor, or what's the other one? Or R plus. I'm like, okay, we're now comparing an agenda, a 4-2 neutral agenda, to a NBN identity to a Wayland asset. Like, again, with the comparisons, why? How do these comparisons, like, we're comparing literal apples to oranges here. Um, so yeah, at some point, I guess the other thing I'll say here is that at some point, I would like Off-World Office to be unbanned. maybe not like long term, long term for the game, but short, more like short term, like within the next 6 months to like year and a half kind of window. I think having Off-World Office in the card pool so that people can play it, so that decks that are a little bit that don't have options for economy elsewhere can have a more reliable, heavily efficient agenda that helps them with their econ. I think that that's a good thing to have for non non tier one decks.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I actually think that's generally the right approach of like, hey, if this like we think this deck's gameplay is fine, but the power level is a little bit too high, and so we're going to trim a part of the consistency of the deck is like a pretty reasonable approach. And like, yeah, I don't know. Off-World Office, I think Off-World Office coming back, like I think part of the reason that PD, in particular these like flood combo PD lists, got so good is because the single best deck that like answered all of their questions perfectly got like just got basically taken completely out of the meta. So like mea culpa on me for saying people should like the Ashen ban was fake and like Seb should be fine. I was 100% wrong on that one. But I think not like it makes sense that if you're going to take a deck like that completely out of the meta, like a thing that it dealt with really well was PD combo, and so like it's still like Seb is still gone, and I think Offworld Office coming back, like we would just go back to we would still see a PD combo style deck. It would just instead of doing it 7 points in a turn one way or another, like it would just still be very consistent, and runners would have not many tools to deal with this. Um, yeah,
So there's two things I'm going to call out from chat. And then
yeah,
I actually have a point on the Seb thing as well. I think I'll start with the Seb thing. So I think that I'm not surprised by like Seb is, yeah, exactly what Mether said. Seb is worse, but is still playable. And that is
yeah,
exactly what the goal was. Like it achieved its goals. I think the reason why we don't see Seb is because Seb is really hard to play. And you're like Seb was only really played by specialists before it was like the clear best tier one deck, and people are like, I cannot believe I have to learn how to play Seb. Um, and so like I don't know if it's good for Seb to be the only tier one like runner deck in a
yeah, yeah,
format.
yeah,
So like I'm pretty happy with Seb, but like I should have brought Seb to the tournament,
yeah.
to the Boston Mega Cities. Like if I had time, I actually thought that Seb was probably the single best positioned uh runner
Yeah,
for the event for me.
yeah, yeah.
Um
And I think I saw not again bringing Seb to the event, and like he didn't have a good time with it. But I was like, I think you probably the court meta is narrow enough that I think you could have gotten around the lack of Ashen, especially with Melius Yugon. I actually think there's a lot more room for Seb to also potentially
yeah.
come back into the
Yeah.
meta, even without Ashen in the meta. Um,
Yeah,
I,
I think that that's true. But yeah, so um the other two things I wanted to call out here was
stuff
one,
in
London mentioned uh says this really just confirms what I was already suspecting, that the off-world office ban had basically nothing to do with the paragraph written about it. Um
I just went back and
I
found that
don't know
paragraph, and like so that paragraph was
You want to
like
go ahead and read it?
yeah, the best agenda for Flood PD to score first is off-world office. The funds it provide can be used to protect key assets, ensuring fully operational status in full power. Allows the PD to focus on drawing cards rather than gaining credits. By forcing Flood to spend more resources on early scoring, we hope that runners will have more opportunities to set up and find windows to contest. Which to me is
Yeah.
what you were saying.
I
So
think that's
like,
still true.
yeah,
Yeah. Like effectively I think all of that is still true. I think that the off-world office being banned stings for a lot of people, but I don't think that that's true in a competitive context. Like one of the reasons why the off-world office ban is so incredibly efficient from a like balance perspective, like from like strictly thinking about tournament decks, was that it wasn't seeing play in other tournament decks. Like it was a quote unquote clean ban from the sake of what the best decks are playing. There's very few decks at the moment that actually need or want off-world office over the other things that they have going on with it. The one exception potentially being R plus. So like, I didn't really want to risk the R plus ban and off-world office on ban and PD actually getting off-world office and this deck that people seem to vehemently hate playing against still being around. Like, and
Yeah.
it's just still true that if you scored an off-world office early with Flood, you could. That is what the setup was for you to then draw your entire deck with fully op instead of gaining credits with the first one and
Yeah.
potentially the second one.
Yeah.
All right.
And then probably the other thing I'm assuming was the response to Azermion. Um, but maybe I'm from chat. Um,
I think that the other thing, yeah, you're correct,
yeah.
is that banning weaker cards around the power, bound power cards hasn't always panned out in card games in general. And that is true. That is not always been the case for other card games. I would say just because it doesn't have it, just because it hasn't worked for other card games in the past doesn't negate the logic for what I have
Yeah. It
currently,
also,
right?
the fact that it, like, yes, there are cases where it hasn't worked in the past. There are also going to be cases in those games where it totally has, right? And so,
Yep.
like, we're
Yep.
gonna, there's a strong human bias towards remembering and emphasizing negative events. It's a really good evolutionary tool. It's a little bit good. It's a little bit less good for making quote unquote objective decisions. And it might turn out that this ban list is the wrong approach, and like that like things will need to go, and like central things need to go. I know a lot of people have said this for a long time about ob, um and I think like there's definitely a world where these edge bans like do cause problems, and like there was actually a good example. Netrunner for a long time was like, oh, endurance was a major problem card. But SBT at the time was like, hey, maybe the actual problem is that shapers can go install endurance, install triple Rozeki, and like my early game is solved, and I have the infinite econ of triple Rozeki. And like the honest answer was both were a problem, and not just banning both at the same time was in fact a mistake. Banning around endurance was a mistake, and that could end up to be the case here. But I do think just saying like conversely, I think like banning trimming power cards is like trimming consistency tools is actually a pretty good way to go after combo decks and after decks that like are pretty reliant on setup. Like Ashen Seb going way down in power because a consistency tool got banned, I think is pretty much a direct example of this working as intended.
Yeah.
The deck went from best deck in format to a a thing that you can play if you're a specialist, because not because a power card got banned from that deck, but just because, I mean, Ashen is a powerful card, but it's not like it was not the card where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm thinking in every matchup like, when is the Ashen going to get played? Like, no, the Seb was doing other powerful stuff. Ashen was a tool to keep that going. Similarly, Offworld Office was like a tool to keep these combo PDs going. So yeah,
Cool. Thank you for. I agree.
yeah.
Good
Uh,
additional context.
Cool. Let's move on to a take from Lost Traveler. Post banlist take. Ob was fine. You didn't need to unban Svidagor. A card that reses for 0 has a trash cost of 4 and essentially a must trash is not okay. Banning it was correct, and backpedaling on that decision was a mistake. We are seeing single remote ob decks find success in the hand of experienced pilots. We had just seen Tuno's horizontal oblist pop as well. Banlist was unnecessary, and vacillating on a good decision undermines SBT.
Um. Okay, I guess I'll go first. Um.
I
I
mean, I can go first if you'd like,
disagree.
but
I'm just. I'm
I
just.
mean, I disagree with this take on almost every level, but like
You go first.
I'm a huge
You go
ob
first.
apologist. So take this with a grain of salt. But like, I mean, I would have probably unbanned Extract rather than Svidagor, but that's because I prefer the Extract style objects over the Svidagor style decks. Svidagor is actually the fairer card, I think, by and large, and has commits many fewer card sins than an Extract does in reality. Um, Saying Ob is doing fine, I just don't think is particularly true to me. Like, yes, a couple of players have done well with Ob. Tuno likes to play Ob. Tuno is, for my money, in the top 5 players of Netrunner in the world. And so I think they could have brought anything. They brought Ob. They did well with it. Tuno's a good player. I'd have a hard time making that line. All of the other Ob decks I've seen are just kind of, they're the Nuvum lists, but they have to play 67 cards to like get some value out of their ID, and it's just not like, I don't know. I don't think those decks are particularly real to me. They did well in part because I genuinely like Alco. I think people are pretty bad at playing into Ob, and especially when it's not part of the meta, so people don't have practice, it's much more likely to ambush people. And Ob going from arguably one of the best decks of the meta to absolutely no play. Like, I think there's a world where SBT could have said it's fine and just let it ride out. I think it's also like, I don't hate this on ban. I don't think it's gonna ruin the game. I don't know. I think it is like, I might have waited till after Worlds to do this kind of unban and just give Ob a season off. But I think like, as someone who enjoys to play Ob, this has me excited to come back to the game a bit. So I don't know. That's sort of my thoughts.
Yeah. Um I'm mostly on the same page as you here. Like, I think that the calling what is currently happening like success of experienced pilots is like not a bad thing. And it doesn't mean that the deck is not actually underpowered um or highly conditional based off of meta, you know. I think that it's good to have these kinds of decks around in general and give Wayland a different way of playing as well. Like, you don't really have assets out of Wayland currently. Like, Ob is really kind of the only place to do that. And the ideal, I'm not going to say the ideal world, but like one, okay, there is the potential here with this ban list that R plus gives NBN some sort of like rush tempo angle. You have Epiphany that is giving a wide NBN deck. You have Nebula that has some form of like ice based, you know, glaciery kind of NBN strategy. So you might actually see like 3 different kinds of archetypes out of NBN. Again, this is ideally if everything just somehow manages to work out, which would be lovely. RH uh, provides a home for Jinteki Glacier. Alco provides a wide strategy for Jinteki. You have Wayland that has Nuvem that is like a glaciery rush kind of tempo-y thing, you know, ice-based strategy. And then you also have like an Ob that's doing some form of like assets matter, but like not necessarily not super wide. So you actually
Yeah,
have like
it's
a wide variety of things going
yeah.
on across all these different factions.
Yeah, I was just
Um,
gonna jump in
yeah.
quickly to say, like, a think a good reason to actually, a good argument, or actually like a good reason to unban Sweeticor over Extract, right, is like we already have a Wayland deck that is single
Yep.
remote rush, and Extract As much as I love Rush Extract Ob, it is a deck that you can already play with Nuvum. So
Yeah.
giving the faction an extra tool to go for a different play style makes sense from that context for sure.
Yep. And just to round out the Corp faction thing here, um, PD, like let's say that we banned PD or we banned fully operational or we banned flood the market. Okay, what are you playing out of purple? Like,
You're just hoping that
let's
Leo gets there somehow. And like Leo is
yeah, you're
actually,
hoping
I
that
think,
Elio.
fine. And especially with Melius Yugon, like it might default back to being the best
No, the
Glacier
problem
deck.
it's no, Tungsten Taylor Bussaw like murders all of the purple things. And so same with Hermes. Like the without taking any action on Hermes, Tungsten Taylor, or Buzzsaw, I don't realistically think that any purple ice based like single remote scoring strategy is going to be a tier 1 or tier 1.5 like strategy. Like I especially with Hermes showing up in multiple other factions, so you have to play against it even more frequently. Um, I just don't really see that coming to fruition. I would love to be proved wrong. Love to be proved wrong. But even if you had Off-World Office unbanned, I don't think that all of a sudden PD is particularly viable into the current meta. Man, okay, we were talking about Ob. We were talking about Ob. I think that the other thing here is that, you know, it's just timing. Like all of these like Ob lists that are coming up right now happened within the last week, I think. You know,
Yeah, I mean the new them
and
lists also all happened the last 2 weeks, and like
new
it
them
is very
also happened in the last 2 weeks.
yeah.
Yeah. So like we tested Svetogor unbanned at the very beginning of testing, like 4 or 5 weeks ago. It looked pretty good, like it looked pretty safe. And then like Tuno doing, like I heard about Tuno doing well. I didn't even like look at the list. I was just like heard Tuno did well at a tournament. I was like, oh god. And I was like, hey Tuno, real quick, do I need to be concerned about this? And Tuno was like, no, I think it's actually probably fine. And I went, cool. I'm glad I don't have to worry about this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean like, odd players are notoriously liars about how good the decks are, but but like
I
Tuno
trust
no,
Tuno.
no,
I trust Tuno.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I very
Or at
much
least
trust Tuno, yeah.
yeah, it's like people who are specialists in their deck. I think often will say it's a little worse than like they know how to beat it, and so they will always evaluate it at the like my opponent plays perfectly, and that is a challenge, especially in a game like Netrunner, which is so skill expressive. Where when you have to play against
Mhm.
these slightly well against these like difficult puzzle box decks of Ob and Alco and these things, like it is challenging. Um, I guess there's a I was just thinking about this, and this well we won't go I'm going to try not to elaborate on this too much more, but I think one of the interesting things to me about Ob and Alco that I like is like, oh, they're decks that like when they get their engine going, they're very consistent, so they're good at asking runners questions in like in a pretty aggressive way. I think it's a neat part of the design that like, oh, those like there are these corp IDs that can move fast, and like I actually would like more factions to have the ability to like present challenges to the runners quickly, as long as runners with a reasonable set of tools are able to do counterplay. So
I have one last thing to say about Ob, and then we should go to the next question, which
yeah,
is
yeah,
we have not yet seen a world current. We haven't seen like a meta and with developments and everything where Svetogor was unbanned and Extract was banned. We
yeah,
haven't seen that.
yeah, yeah, and I think it's much more likely that it's a healthier world than the one we had where Sutagor was banned and Extract was unbanned. Now, I still think it's Basalt's problem, but that's a whole separate thing. We do have no 2 more questions. My goodness, we gotta wait. We've got some to go. Okay. Um, Melius, PD, Basalt, Sim Reset. I'm coming to the conclusion that recursion is always the problem. Even the 2209 ban team thought so. Though I have to admit there are other problems there as well. What are your thoughts on recursion? Um, there's a lot here. I think recursion needs a
There
stronger.
is a lot.
Yeah. Basically,
Agreed.
recursion should have very strong restrictions. The tutoring ID is Ob, Editorial, Foundry have some restrictions. PD and Melius have no restrictions. I actually think that's very unfair to PD. PD has a
Agreed.
huge restriction on its recursion. Corporate Hospitality has a very strong restriction because it doubles huge cost. Spin is a concession. I also don't think it's actually that good of a recursion card. And then Ashen got a ban for it too. So oh, sorry. And this is, I should say, from Cold Lava. Ashen got the ban for it as well, though if it was only into deck and didn't draw you 5 cards, that would probably be fine-ish. So I think the general point is like low restriction recursion cards seem to be very, very powerful. But yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, recursion is very dangerous in general, but I don't think that that means that we should stop printing recursion. It's just a matter of like how conditional it is and the other just general factors around it. I think corporate hospitality, was a card that was mentioned here, and I actually think that Jeff was the person that was like playtesting corporate hospitality and was like, "This is incredibly worrying and kind of broken." And at the time, it cost 2 to play. It was the same net payout, but
Mm.
it just cost 2. And then we nerfed it to cost 4, and all of a sudden it felt like an infinitely more fair card. It still had the 1 trash cost, but the fact that the corp couldn't go super low, resing their things, it just became more clunky and harder to work around. And now corporate hospitality is now like an interesting card that is certainly isn't breaking the game, in part because of its trash costs. It's also the reason why I generally believe in trash costs on operations. Um, but yeah, like we have to be careful with how we think about recursion. So, for example, on the development side, I am very wary of event recursion. I believe that events should basically be positioned as powerful one-off effects that have a large impact on the game, but you can't both have that and then also say, hey, now you can play the same one like 6 or 9 times. um, so yeah,
Yeah.
and I know I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, and I can still hear you. I'm gonna step away for 1 minute to feed cats again.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Cats get second dinner.
Cats. Oh man, cats living big. I get half of a dinner because Calliope decides that she needs to eat half of the food off of both of our plates. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think it's like I think recursion can be problematic, but like many things can be problematic. And I don't know. I think the like it is almost always about how costly is it to play the best thing I can do right now. And like recursion has the powerful effect of like, hey, as long as I've seen the best card I could play right now, I get to play that card again. So that's always going to be a little bit suspect where like, yeah, I can do the best thing I need to do again. But I don't think it's like intrinsically problematic. I think it's like, oh, when you look at a card like Simulchip, like, oh, it is recursion and it's econ and it's like instant speed tricks. So like a lot of these like really powerful recursion cards uh are like they're problematic because they are not just recursion, but they are above rate on 2 to 3 different axes. I had actually forgotten about that corporate hospitality example, and like it is like as you said, like oh yeah, I do remember the like at 2 cost that card was so good, and at 4 cost it just like it suddenly is much more marginal. Uh, so I don't know. I think it's I think like yeah, recursion is problematic. I think Ashen shuffling back your whole deck and not drawing would probably still be a little bit too strong, but it would be much closer. And like the draw 5, like to me, I mean like we have Harmony AR therapy, which like probably could see a little bit of play. But
Yeah. Air Harmony Therapy is a card that every single time is played against me. Not every single time, I should say. I should say when it is a well thought out include in a deck that is being played against me, I go, huh, that card might not actually be bad. And then every single time I try to play it, I'm like, this card is bad.
yeah, I kept being like, wait, I could put this in my Ari deck, so I could like, I'm running out of gas. So if I just put in one Harmony AR therapy, I can get, I can get environmental testing, a
Yeah.
simul chip, a muse, Physarum, and like a draw and like a ritual or something. Like, it'll be
And a
great.
simul chip. It's crazy.
Yeah, right.
Imagine how good that would be.
And then it's like, oh, but then I play a game and I'm like, holy this is such a brick. This is such a brick. This is such a brick. Like,
Oh, you know what I'm realizing actually? I feel like AR Harmony Therapy. This is so bad. Harmony Therapy, the AR Harmony Therapy card. I feel like that's like the simulation reset of Runner, but Runner just has a much easier time drawing through their deck very quickly and not getting like completely domed as a result.
mhm,
So it's seen more play, but like ultimately it's only really good when
when
you
you're
have a
gonna
bunch
empty
of
your
other
deck. Yeah.
which means that you have a bunch of other really good things going on already, so it's just like the capper, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's the like if my problem is I get to the bottom of my 45 consistently, and then I need 5 more cards to win the game, you have a couple of options. And like honestly, because draw is so good on the runner side, it's often better to say, oh, I can just put in 5 more good cards rather than saying, oh, my best I need to get back I need to play a bad card that gets back my best 5 cards.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
But like sometimes your cards are much more situational. But um, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think. Yeah, I don't know. It's like yeah, I think it's like I think there is a simple take of like recursion is always a problem. I do think basalt is a problem. I think basalt's I actually think if Assault didn't have the on steel text, I think it would be a perfectly fine card. With the on steel text, it's a little frustrating. Even though I think I lost to it at on last Saturday because it got scored. I'm like, you know what? Corp scored a 5-3. They they got it's new of them. They drew four seamlesses. Well, they drew three seamlesses, recurred one off of basalt, and hit like the stuff to hit Mioshu. So like, yeah, I'll just lose those. But I don't know. Its recursion is very much, I think, it is about how easy it is relative to a whole bunch of other costs.
Yeah. Mm.
And actually, Preachie's
Next
asking
question.
a very similar question. So,
Mhm.
with recursion is always the problem, is there room for a future flip side with runner anti-recursion tech? Thinking about how compilation can get cards out of archives. If there were more effects that could remove threats from archives, would Melius, PD, Basalt, etc. become more palatable, either through temporary means like Cup or RFGing cards out of archives to make them proper gone?
You know, I think you had a great quote from last weekend. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I have no idea. I
You
say words
said
and then immediately forget them.
fair. You said something to the effect of, I actually enjoyed this meta. Like after playing the tournament, I enjoyed the meta more than I thought I was going to. And I did have a lot of good games, but I think this is a meta where I'd unironically play Archives interface, and that might be a problem.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
I think it was
so
I
yeah,
think probably my quote was actually I think my quote was probably close to like, oh, I played two compilations and I was right in literally every single matchup, and I think that's probably not a good sign. I think someone else when I said the archives interface, that sounds maybe like a
fair.
I'm gonna guess that might be a deism. But
Yeah, I think that I like having cards like compilation. What's the other current ones that
yeah, I was
actually
gonna say
exist?
Heliumphora did not make the list here of
Right,
Preachi's
Helium
list,
Fora.
but Heliumphora is almost explicitly designed to do this. Or not even
Yeah,
almost explicitly. It is explicitly for this thing, right?
yeah, yep. Yeah, Helium Fora does exist. Not Burner. Well, there's Detente actually also, right? Our favorite card that, as it turns out, when it's good,
Uh,
um, when it's good and not in the version that we printed, but when it was in playtest and it
that's
had some other
true.
text on it.
That's true.
Oh
When it had,
buddy,
I mean, when it had
oh
entirely different
buddy.
text, it was a busted card and really good against any combo
No,
deck.
it wasn't. Here's the thing: the text wasn't that far off from what this was. The text was
Uh,
not that far off.
I mean, there was a lot of versions with different text, and I don't remember how close it was to playable for a while. I mean, I just remember having so many discussions with Sam where they just would keep malting about it, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that
But
was. I still have the cut up the taunt image saved on my desktop. It's one of my favorite things.
yeah, I to go back to the
uh,
question though, like anti-recursion tech. I think to me, like I don't like if NSG wanted to print some anti-recursion tech, like that's fine. I think the thing I don't like is that I don't know. Netrunner is ultimately a game about locks and keys, right? And like right now, runners have a set of keys, and you could you could design the game such that one of the keys that runners need to have is the ability to set off recursion. I think to me that is not a particularly interesting key to add to the game because it is so binary and like just like I don't know. It's trying to give a safety valve to a thing that can be addressed in a more elegant way rather than making people include a tech card. Like I don't know. I people have Plaskreet to me is like an example that people always talk about. Where like, oh, this was a crude tech card that solved a problem and it solved it hard and well, and so like It was just a thing that got played, and it was pretty inelegant. And I think like it's hard to make anti-recursion tech not a plastic carapace. I think, and it's just the game is not better with those cards, so it's better to try and address the recursion from the side of from the side doing the recurring rather than saying, "Oh, this is a new tool that a new thing runners need to be able to compete with."
Yeah. It it's I don't think that we need necessarily to have like a lot of silver bullet tech cards in the game. I think that having a few so that players can opt in and like self correct is good, but ultimately, I think that you know PD's recursion ability is coming up in the context here because of the combo deck. Not like I haven't really heard many people complain about PD's recursion ability before giving you seamless on demand. I think that
I
was
mean,
like,
during the peak of Rush PD heyday, it was a thing that people
yeah,
mentioned
was
quite a
it?
bit, right? Like it was.
Okay.
I think like it's funny. I think people complain more about the six. They're like, why does it do that and six card hand size? So like people almost landed more on the six card hand
Right.
size than they did on the recursion. So
The six
like
card hand size is definitely relevant and good.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
it is good on both sides, and it is definitely one of those things where I'm like, oh yeah, I remember exactly how I got the six card hand size, and boy, it'd be great if it didn't have it, but just in the moment,
Hmm.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, it's like these small little details end up mattering and being like pretty impactful, I think. So I had to actually go back and look. I was like, I swear, like I read the text on detente because it has left my brain. And I was like, what is the difference? And then I went back and I looked, and it's that before the card wait, nope, that's not even correct anymore. This is
there was
no.
so many versions of Detente. There was ones where like it just was a breach, so you could get to stack multi-access effects on it. Like there was all I don't know, it had many different texts. Um,
It did, and I'm trying to remember. I thought that I had found it. I'm gonna
yeah,
go find it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, one of the things
Because
about
it's
PD is
funny.
like, is PD is always recurring seamless a little bit busted? Absolutely, absolutely. In exchange, in theory, the good exchange should be, and the rest of your ID text is blank, and so your ID is going to fire twice a game. But like, I don't know. It turns out that also having six hand size is a really big deal. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Um, yeah, and London, we've talked about this in previous episodes on Metro Response. Like, yeah, seamless launch also is just on its own a card that's a little bit too good, too over curve. So like PD is a little over curve for where it should be for an IT. Seamless is a little bit over curve where it should be on Never Advancements. And so it's just kind of together they end up being really strong. But I don't know that it's like a
Okay,
recursion is the inherent problem.
I found it. I was correct the first time. The
Okay.
subtle difference that made detente go from incredibly infuriating and basically busted to very close to unplayable um, was that this says you may host one card from HQ at random face up. You don't know what it is. It before was you revealed a card from HQ and then you could optionally choose to host it.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Uh,
that was the final
yeah,
change, wasn't it?
yes, that was the final change. So like literally just changing, hey, you can choose to host the thing. You get to see the thing and then you can choose if you want to host it or not. So you don't just, you know, I don't know, randomly host an agenda that you would have otherwise accessed on top of the Daton. Like that is the level of detail that gets changed and makes a card from being like it is so infuriating that it is making one of the top players in the game lose their freaking mind and think that it's going to break the game to no one is touching this and I had to remember and look up what the text was.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a fair point. Cool. All right. Well, I think we are at just over an hour. any final thoughts on the ban list or the mega city we're at or other stuff?
Um, I am hopeful, cautiously optimistic about where the medal will lead. I sure as hell hope that it goes somewhere good, because if it doesn't,
It's gonna be very
no
tough.
one's gonna be happy. No one's gonna
Yeah.
be happy, right? Players won't be happy. I won't be happy. No one's gonna be happy if that doesn't happen. I think it's more likely to be headed in a good direction than less likely, but um, making ban lists is hard. It's
Yeah.
hard, and
Yep.
I
Yep.
look forward to future card releases.
Yep. Hopefully one day we'll be at a release cadence where we don't need to be doing 3 band lists in the same meta. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. It was great to see so many people here, and we will see you all. We will be back on our regular Thursday time slot next week. Thank you all for tuning in, and enjoy the rest of your weekends.